And good morning, everybody. Today is April the 24th, 2015, and it's Friday. And today's webinar is webinar number 147, Andy Stapleton, Classes Part 4. It's all yours, Andy.
Good morning, everybody. Up and at 'em, bright and bushy-tailed, ready to rock and roll. Went through all of this stuff so far, talking about what classes are, why you do the things you do in classes, how to set up a base set of classes, and using the indirection within your classes, using, including your classes in with other classes. We've done classed out. So now we really got to build something, because sooner or later, with all of this effort going through setting up all these classes, we'll really see whether or not that it's workable. And frankly, I've been putting out this budget software since the developers conference is a kind of a base on how to do things, because it actually is useful as well. But one thing that's been missing out of this is a reconciliation, which is something my wife has been fussing at me about anyway to get. So reconciliation is where it is. So we've already had the UML out here where we've generated the reconcile UML, which is right here. And if we hit the F2 on this, like we showed previously, we see the actual code. Now we see the actual layout of this. There's a couple of things that we want to do with the actual class code, and this is the way I use it. Now you can obviously change or do it the best way it fits your needs. Whatever you feel is easier. If it makes you feel easier to go in the UML and enter in one at a time, that's fine. As an old COBOL programmer and stuff like that with me, I've always had the habit of just putting in what I need, and hopefully things work right. But what I want to do here, as you can see, is I want to go ahead and put in a couple of items in here that we need to do through this. And one of them is that we got the profile ID. Well, the profile ID is I need a couple of bits of information from another deal to go with that. So I'm going to open up the profile class over here. And you see I got the full name, address, city, state, serial number. So what I want to go ahead and do is go ahead and pull out the name of the item here. And what I do then is I'm going to put full name here, which is my profile information. Put that right there. So now I have it. One thing that is missing from this, it looks like to me, is the actual account. I don't see the account ID. So we need to fix that. So I'll go over to my trusty analysis, close this, and let's open up the analysis and take care of that real quick. Wrong one. I want to open the analysis. Oh, it's right over here. That's one. All right. There's reconcile. Reconcile has that, and what is missing is the bank invoice, bank account ID, which is right there. Account ID is what I'm looking for. So I'll just add my account ID here. Take it out of this one so I won't have the automatic key, and that is done. When I generate it now after adding that, what it will do is it will go ahead and say, hey, you need to add this to your class. And I'll say, yes, I do. And it'll go ahead and do that for me. Okay. And there it is. You can see what happens is by adding that field, the account ID says, oh, I need to create the UML attribute, and I go ahead and do that. Now, on occasion, when you come in here and look at the reconcile, you'll see that you still don't have it here. It's not here at all. And that's fine. I mean, it's not a big deal one way or another. What I do at this point is I go ahead and put it in there. Now, you notice that I did not, I'll go ahead and initialize it to 0. I did not put it at the bottom where the other one was. I don't have to. This can be in the order that I want to see them. This can be in the order that I want to display in my table. It can be in any order I so desire, because it's going to match up name to name instead of number to number. So instead of being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down the line, I can actually mix them up and put them anywhere I want. I can put the full name up the top, and it's going to match name by name, which is a much nicer methodology than field 1 that you return automatically goes into field 1 of your class. When you're done with that and you close it and save it, okay, well, we want to add one more thing to this before I close it. We want to add in the account information. So I'm going to go over here and go ahead to the account classes and get it out of the bank. That's not what I want. There it is. I want this one. I'm going to go into this one, and I'm going to go ahead and pull the account number and bank name out of it to put over there. Now, I'm only pulling the 2 fields, and there's a reason behind that. I don't need all the fields. All I want to do is say this is the part that I want to work with, nothing more, nothing less. So I've got those fields. Okay, so now what we need to do now my world is SQL. Okay, so let's understand each other. My world is SQL. Being that it's SQL, I do things a little different than most people do. I will set up a complete set of SQL statements in order to make things work properly. So let's take a look at that. I've got my record structure, basically, is what I've got here in the class. And now I need to go ahead and build the base class to go on top of that. So here's where I go back to the file manager class. And everybody remembers going through the file manager class. So I'm going to go home, and I'm going to say open. I'm going to go to that repository. If everybody downloaded the repository at one time, they should have this by now. But in the repository, I have the file manager class. Now, since the repository is part of my SCM, I cannot just automatically start changing stuff in here. You notice that it turned gray and says, nope, you can't change it because it's read-only. That's on purpose. The reason why I want to do that is I don't want to change my original file here. I would rather say, you can't do that. So I don't want to do a save as. The save as is how I get it in here to make it work for me. Now, this is the reconcile file, so I'm going to do a reconcile class. My naming conventions are basically whatever the file name is, class for the file management class, and then I do data for it or record for the actual physical record. That's the way I work it. Oh, I already have it in here, so let's take a look at it. Yes, I already built it once. So now I replace all the UML. It's kind of like that TV cooking show. They show you the ingredients, then all of a sudden flip over to the pan and it's already put together. That's what we just did. So basically, I replaced all the UML class with Reconcile, which is my base class that we've been working with, and then I set up the PK field name of Reconcile ID, which is the primary key, the file name, and the alias, which is Recon, is what I got on there. And I come down, and I don't have to change anything else. It's all set up. Everybody's life is good. Here we go, rock and roll. All right, so once we're done with that, we need to start using it. Let's go ahead and put this over here. If I'm going to be using this, especially in the areas where we're talking about the dashboard type functions, a lot of the stuff is global. Just declaring the class doesn't really bother it as much, but I do like to have them kind of preset on certain things. Part of the presetting is going ahead and putting it here. If you'll notice, I went ahead and added this where it says reconcile data is reconcile class. That way I go ahead and declared the class. It's sitting there. I can start using it. One of the other pieces that I do is is what I call a setup, and it queries. Okay, what that is a global procedure that allows me to set up what my SQL statements are going to be without actually executing them, and then they'll work the same no matter what, and I don't have to change them in multiple places. So in this instance here, since I'm including other parts of the application or the other parts of the data in here, I'm going to be at a reconcile data, and I've got a join field list. And what I do is I just go ahead and put the brackets there so I know exactly what I do. And then I do a reconcile data, inner join statement, and the same thing. So let's put the fields in here. I know right off the bat that I need certain fields that I've told it that I'm putting in. So I go back to my, usually I don't have this closed, but I go back here and I have full name and account name and bank name. Things that I need from this is I need the prefixes. Now, full name comes from the profile inventory, so that's going to be profile, the PROF full name, and account numbers from the bank, the account ID, so that's both of them is going to be account and account. Key point is I put commas in front of each one of them. That way it's part of the SQL statement. What this does, as we step through this, you'll see it. It actually builds a SQL statement on the fly, because this is the join field list to go in there. Now, in order to get this data, we've got to add in the last pieces. Inner join, profile, as prof, on prof, profile ID, equals on profile ID. And then we do the final inner join, bank IMV account, as B as account, on account, account equals the Recon account ID. Now that's all I've done, and that's all I need to do. I don't need to fetch here. I've got no reason to fetch here. I don't need to do a where clause. All I'm doing is setting up that anytime I want to select from this table, no matter what, I want it to go ahead and I want to bring in my profile, and I want to bring in the account that whatever's associated with it. I don't have to do anything more than this, and this is consistent through all my programs. As I've looked at this, I've ended up and figured out that, well, I'm always, if I have to have something different, well, I have to declare it. The one thing that PCSoft does that I do like is that you could have 100 fields in that particular class, and if you don't use them all, it will go ahead and destroy them. In other words, it won't keep them in memory as blank or empty fields. So if I don't use the account number as an example, then later on, if I try to reference that field in there, it'll actually give you an error. It'll say, nah, it doesn't have that here. And that's because it's going to say, well, you're not using it, so we're going to destroy it. And that's fine. I personally like that. But that also means that I can have a base class of reconcile data, and then I can declare reconcile to be something else entirely. I can call it reconcile temp data, and actually pull more data for some other reason, or a summary or something like that. And a lot of times I do that. If I want to have, say, a reconcile summary or a bank account summary, I'll declare the bank account class again as bank summary, and then keep a running total of it as I go through by account number, which is something I already do. So continuing on with this, you know, I've got this set up. It's run directly right off the bat, so that's preset on my fields and everything that I need to use. And so now what we can do is start actually building the screen part of this process and get that set up. So let's take a look and see if I've managed to do that before. And you can see there's no reconcile in here. So let's deal with the reconcile screen first. Since this, I'm going to build this as a separate screen. Most of my stuff is on the dashboard because that was something that we were dealing with and working with. And so what I want to do is make this a pop-up or separate window entirely to work with it. So here's what I need to do. I'm going to go ahead and do a new. And I'm going to do a new window. If you notice, I am working in 20 now. And I'm going to bring up this new window. It's going to be blank because I don't care. And there's a couple things that I'm going to do before I start anything else. I'm going to go ahead and do a save as, so I'll have it as the name I want. That way all my IntelliSense starts working and things like that. So we'll call this Reconcile. That way I know that it is the name of the code. And I'm going to put in a couple things here. One is I'm going to go ahead and declare the reconcile record, because each time you click on one, I want it to bring in the record or have the record set correct on this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and type in Recon record. Fingers work. And this, I don't want to do the class. I want to do the base, which is right there. That's all I need to do. And then I usually do an init because I don't really like having code everywhere, and I do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my fetch data on this. And actually, I'm going to pass the bank account to this window when I open it. So let's create a local procedure, init. And let's go ahead, and now what we want to do is fetch the data that we got going on along with the table. Back to our window. Here's one of the cool things. You notice I'm separating this. That's the actual code and window. This is a new feature in 20 that allows me to look at the window and write the code at the same time. If you haven't played with that, it really is pretty neat. I like it. I have more than one window, but I'm not going to push it completely over the side because you can't see it. But we'll go ahead and work with these two things together right now. So let's create the table. I'm going to put the table here. Table control is going to say, do I find an existing query or what? I want a variable. When I do the variable, since I defined it in my global, it should be here, and there it is. And I'm going to get the AAR rec, which is my array of records. That's what that stands for. ARR is for array, rec is records. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that. Now, what do I want to see in here? Well, what I want to see is the account number. I don't need to see the bank name. I really don't need to see the account number either. So let's do that slightly different, and I'll show you a couple tricks with that. So let's go to the date, the month and year it was done. Let's go to the beginning balance and ending balance so we can have both of those, and ending balance. And let's go to let's put the reconciliation date on there. That's the date you actually completed it. And we can go ahead and put any interest in there and service charge in there And that's about it. Oh, we need a completed flag. Okay, so we got all those items there, and we hit the check box, and there we go. It's all pre-filled. Everything is there. I kind of like a little bit of cleanup on this. The month year is way too big, so I'm going to clean up a little bit. Do that. And balance. And ending balance. Date. Interest is fine. Service charge. And the final thing is we got the interest. Actually, that got moved over. Let's put it back. You can drag and drop and complete it as a checkbox. So we got that. And the last thing I want to do here is, do I want to expend or extend any of these items here? No, I don't. So I really have to go to my anchoring. Because it automatically anchors as a full screen now, and I'm not going to be doing that. So what I want to do here, since this is a pop-up, I'm going to go ahead and expand out, and I'm going to literally make the window smaller is what I'm going to do, because I'm not going to allow them to, I'm not going to allow the wife to expand it full screen. She'll ask me, why is it doing that anyway? We don't need searches for the beginning balance or the ending balance. Date is fine. We want to do that one. Service charge we don't need, so we'll bring that back in. Interest, we don't need to search for interest. We already know that. Month, year, probably do need to do that. And we can make this a little smaller again. Okay. The only thing missing is, where do we start from here? Do we get to add, change, or delete? Well, there's a couple things I want to do. Number one is I want to have the banking information. So I'm going to go ahead and put that there. And I'm going to put a couple of static fields up here to say that what bank, an account. So we'll call this one the account number. Get a little bit bigger. That way there's no confusion about what account you're in. And we'll make this one the bank name. And the only reason I'm typing that in there, because it really doesn't matter, is I know where it is. It shows me where it is. I don't have a problem with that. That's the reason why I do that. So I got both of those items there. And I need to have me some buttons in order to add, change, and delete. Now, one of the things that, well, let's go ahead and finish our knit part first. And then we'll get into the buttons before we do there. And we kind of went over the buttons before in the templates for the ACD. I'll probably spend a couple minutes on that again, so that way you can understand it. But right now I want to do my fetch. So I want to do my where clause. So I'm going to do my recon data dot filter string. That way I have a filter. And I'm going to do a string build. That's going to be where recon dot account ID equals %1. And as whatever the value of the one that's passed in, I'm going to do reconcile data. And I'm going to tell it to fetch my data. And the last thing on the list at this point is I'm going to do a table display. And it rock and roll. What that'll do now is whatever data is currently there will now list up on my screen. Everybody's happy, life is good, and I'm going to put this right back here again. Now you notice it just popped right back where it belonged. So let's now look at the buttons. In our templates, in the repository, you'll see there's a CCS add, change, and delete, and a CCS save, cancel. The add, change, delete are just a series of buttons, add, change, and delete. Simple as that. But what it does underneath the covers is more important than anything. There are several procedures that go with this. As you can see, there's the add post record, pre-record, add record, delete, delete pre. There's one for each one of them, pre-CRUD and post-CRUD, update, on and on. And what they're doing there is allowing you different places to put data or to build data on the fly. So let's look at the add record as an example. This is using indirection with fields that we're going to further define. As you notice that I've set up different strings with string build parameters of %1, %2, different things like this. And what it's going to do is build those and then execute the code. It's going to execute the code on everything that I've got going through here. Here's where I'm using indirection to make sure I get the right file class prefix in order to open the form and set things. Save does exactly the same thing. It goes through indirection, all the code's pre-written, and allows you then to utilize it or override it if you need to, whatever you want to do, and put code in order to save, change, or delete your record based upon the classes. And that's the reason why I built them, so I don't have to do much. So what am I going to do here in order to handle this? Well, I'm going to go back to the record screen, and I'm just going to drag this out of here, and I'm going to drop it on the screen. Now I've got that on there. Don't like the naming conventions that's there. So I will now go to the description, and I'm just doing a CTRL ACD for add, change, and delete. I'm done with it. Again, we talked about the movement of this. I'm going to turn off the resizable. That takes care of that. Okay, so now the next step we got to do, we got to tell the add, change, and delete exactly what it's dealing with. So we go into our F2 here, and we got all the global declarations. If you don't know what you're looking for, you'll notice that all of these fields up here are set. The main ones that you need is anything dealing with calling a form. Now, they're all set up also to call a form on the same screen if you want to, but we don't really need to do that. We just want to do this first. So let's just go in there, CRUD, and we got the file class prefix. This is for the file, and that's going to be Recon data. CRUD record class prefix is going to be reconcile. Now, I'm going to put double quotes around every one of these, but I just fill them in first so I can use the IntelliSense first, is what I do. And then we're going to do record class. I'm sorry, record class prefixes, reconcile record. That's what that is. And this one here now is reconcile. CRUD open type. This tells me what I'm doing, and that is an equate open modal. There are two methods to do that. I can actually tell it to open as a sister, so I can actually open up multiple records if I want to, or I can tell it, no, I just want it open once and once only. So in other words, the opening of the screen is modal, and you have to finish that screen before you can go to another one, which is good. And then we got the form name. I don't think there's anything else. Oh yeah, primary field. We got to have the primary field. In the primary field, file ID. So now let's put some double quotes around all this stuff. I now have the buttons. They're all said and done. Make my stuff neat, not like Pete does. He's not in here anyway. He's on the phone. Okay. So now what we got here is we got the reconcile data. We know what the file class prefix is because we declared it in our global. The record class we declared currently on this screen as the record because we don't need to declare that global unless we're going to use it as a global. Okay. The open type we set up as a modal open type. We declared the form name, which is our form reconcile. And we told it the primary key field is reconcile ID. That's pretty much it. That's all we got to do in there. Everything else is taken care of automatically by the add, change, and delete procedures that are already built. We're done. We're going to do 2 more things on this screen, and in essence, we're done with it. So the biggest thing we got to do now is somebody wants to look at an existing reconciliation for whatever reason. Well, the first thing we've got to do is we certainly got to tell it what record we're going to work with. In the code, we have a selecting a row of the table AR record. What that does is say how things are coming back to me. Because it's a variable, because we declared a variable, there's a couple things we can look at here. If I set that to be the stored record of AR rec with a small n, that means I'm going to return the entire record. That's right, the entire record to the record structure. This is what makes things really kind of cool and easy, because in essence, at this point, I am in good shape. I don't have to go fetch the field based upon an ID. You can set it up to be the primary ID and step through a couple more features, but right now we're going to do it this way. And if anybody says, hey, I have to get it for 1 and 1 only, and because I can't use that, go ahead and I'll show you how to do that, because we got the methods to be able to handle that. But right now we got this, so let's go back into the code. And down here on the selection or selecting a row, there's a couple things we got to do. Number 1, when you first come in the screen, there's never been any records. Guess what? There's nothing in the screen. If you click on a row, what's going to happen if I'm trying to select a record? It's going to blow up on you. It's going to say, nope, that ain't right. So the first thing I want to do is check before anything else to see if there's any records. If table ARREC empty equals false. This is something that a good friend of mine said after all the years he's been in WinDev. He didn't know that you could do this on the table. Yeah, you can. And I want to make sure that you've actually selected something. So table select is greater than 0. That tells me you've actually selected something. Now you say, well, doesn't the table select actually says you select something? Well, yeah, it selected the first row. It'd come back as a 1 even if there wasn't any record in there. So I have to have both. Then the final step is I do the recon record equals my table. That's all I have to do. I don't have to do anything other than that. If I have some display data or something like that on the screen that I want to do, I can certainly handle that. But other than that, I don't have to do anything other than that. And I've got the record now available to send to my form. Okay. The last step to finish off this screen is we got to set this account and bank name, don't we? So what I'm going to do here at the top in my init, again, you notice I've already fetched the data. Well, I'm going to add one more piece to this. If reconcile data, ARREC, and empty, false, then my STC account, since this is only one account, I can only send one account in here. I already know it. I can do reconcile data AR rec. One account number. I can actually go further and go ahead and do that account. And then I can go ahead and do the ST bank name equals what'll happen now is they'll take the first record that you get back and then go ahead and put that in there, is what it'll do. If it doesn't have either one of them, like it's the first time you've done something, obviously then you got to fetch your bank account or something like that, which you can do partially, if I remember right. Actually, I'm passing the entire account around, so I could literally do it differently. But let's go with this right now, because we want to get to the form anyway before we go too further. It's 37. We want to kind of set up our form a little bit. Okay, because we won't necessarily be able to finish the entire functionality of this, but at least we'll have the two forms created, and I'll clean up the rest of it before I put out the backup of this. Again, it's going to be in version 20. For anybody that does not have 20 yet, sorry. You can follow along here and create it in 19 exactly the same way. It makes no difference, but you won't be able to just open up the program and do it. Okay?
Or I can hook them up.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Tim can certainly hook you up for version 20. He certainly can hook you up. And they put out the second release of it. I'm hoping in a couple of weeks. I'm going to ride my bikes back from Texas next week, but I'm hoping in a couple of weeks to kind of give everybody a quick view of the parallel task, because I'm working with it now. So let's create our form. We go back to new form again. We're going to create another window, and we called it form reconcile. So I'm going to go back to the home, save as, FRM reconcile. Here's where life changes. In the form reconcile, or in the window reconcile, when you look at adding a record, you'll notice that it doesn't open on the form, sending the file class, the record class, and whatever action is supposed to be done. So in the form, I've got to go ahead and get those deals. Now, you say, well, you declared it up front. I don't need to declare it here. I do it either direction. I just do it anyway. And the reason why I do it is because there are times where I've created a temporary and I want to be able to pass it as the deal and make it work. So I'm going to be going ahead and put in here reconcile data. And then I need the record. So reconcile record. Since that has not been declared globally, I have to declare it here. And then I'm going to put action type. And what that does now is it gives me exactly what's being passed, the data functionality, the record that I'm sending, and whatever action type I'm dealing with. Let's go ahead and toss a couple things out here. I'm going to go ahead and go back, and before I do anything, and I put the save cancel on there. That way I can work with it underneath the covers. And I'm going to put CTRL, save, cancel. Back to code. You notice I'm sending the action type with me. The action type is telling me what I'm going to do to the record inside this form. That can be either add, change, delete, view, whatever the heck you want it to be. You set your own equates and you set what you want to do with it. But I do have to set that. So I'm going to set a control, save, cancel, dot, SC action type equals R action type. If you're starting to edit and all of a sudden nothing's being saved, 9 times out of 10, actually 100% of the time, is because you forgot to do this. Absolutely forgot to do this. I'm going to go ahead and create my init again because I like having an init, and then I'm going to do a source to screen. So that way I have now anything that I've done, if I'm sending an edit or whatever, variable resets, you know, it actually gets put to the screen. So let's go ahead and do this, and we'll create the local procedure. We'll add that. We're good to go. And we go back to our form, and we are now set to actually do something. The only thing that's going to happen here is that I'm going to change it because there's going to be a couple things that we won't want it to do on an edit. If it's completed, we don't want it to edit anything. We don't want to be able to edit one that's already been completed. We can let them delete it, but we can't let them do it, okay? But we'll go through that as we go through, just some business rules. First thing I need over here is I need a listing of all of the checks that have not been cleared. Well, I have a global deal on the checks, but this comes into right now where we're talking about setting up the problem, or setting up the temporary data file for that. So what I'm going to do is a trans recon data is transaction class. Okay. Now, the only thing I've done there is set up, I've redeclared the transactions class so I could go ahead and pull all of that data without affecting all of the data. Okay. The only things I want is anything that's not cleared or not been reconciled. That's what I'm wanting out of the reconciled data. That's it. So now I've got that done. I got to go get those records. Okay. And I'm going to do transaction data filter string build where, and let's look at my variables. So we'll go, and the other thing I need to do, if you forget prefixes, now usually I name them the same as this would be tran, but I'm going to just check this real quick. I just type in that, hit F2, and I go to it. You see I went straight to it, go up the top. And there it is, it's trans. So I know it's trans, okay? It's recon data I wanted. Don't get transaction data, that'll be wrong. Okay. And so trans dot count ID equals %1 and reconcile ID. And this is where you got the is not. Now you may not have to do, depending upon your SQL, is what you have to do here. I'm using Postgres, so I have to do it this way. If you use an MS SQL, that's going to be is null. If you're using hyperfile, I think you can just use 0 on a hyperfile. I'm not sure. You have to kind of figure that out. Okay. And there we go. Now what I've done here is says, go get me all of this stuff and this stuff where I've never reconciled it. And you're saying, well, we got a little bit of an order ID issue. So what I'm going to do also is I've got one more field here. Order by. And I want it to order by transdate is what I want it to be. So now what I've got is it will now be ordered by the oldest date first. And we can now put the table on the screen. So let's put the table on the screen, and we'll deal with a few things that we can do with this as we go through it. We got about 15 minutes. I think we can handle this. So we'll put this right here. And we're going to existing variable again. The difference is you can see I can have the trans recon data here is local now. And that's what I want to work with. I want to work with the local one. I don't want to work with the global one. So I'm going to go back in here, my rec, and I'm going to say, okay, so what do we want to do? Well, normally we want to sort by certain things. We're going to go ahead and we're going to have the date, trans date. We'll put the label there so I know what it is. We'll put the check ID, pay to, and then the P amount. Where you at? Oh, the amount. Where's the amount or P amount? I think it's P. Yeah, I think it's P. Okay. And the amount. Okay. And that's really, I think it's all I need. If I have to change that later, I will. So plan my deal. All right. Got the date. Squeeze up the label. We want to, oh yeah, we do want to search on check because she may search on check number. She does that. Trying to find something, so we got to put that back in there. I wish they would allow you to double click that, put that back. I don't know if it does that or not. Probably two's there. We're going to make this screen a little bit bigger. Certainly going to make it bigger because that's not going to work. All right. Here's a little bit more room. Okay, so we'll leave it at that for the moment. She's able to sort by the different ways that she needs to sort by, including the amount, the pay to, check. She'll be able to search by them, so we're good to go. Now we got to put some fields over here to work with. The fields, obviously, that we're working with has to deal with, you know, the reconciliation. So I want to put the fields over there. Yeah, we'll need. To throw out a hint for PC Soft if they happen to be listening, it would absolutely be wonderful, wonderful if I could go to the class and go to the members of the class or even the properties of the class, drag them over and drop them on and make them fields. That would be wonderful to do that. Don't have to do anything more except drag them over and make them fields and have them go ahead and link. But since I can't do that, I'll go down to the analysis and we'll do it here. So I want to put the month and year. I'm going to go ahead and set this thing up for the recon date. I'm going to put in the beginning balance, the ending balance. We'll put any interest, service charge, and that's all I need out of that group. Okay, obviously they look ugly. You can spend some time in your analysis kind of cleaning them up if you want to, but at this point in time, what I'm doing now is I'm going to the edit control and I'm relinking it to the local variable. You notice that there's a reconcile variable there. I'm going to relink that to the local variable. So if you have spent the time to go ahead and clean up your analysis to make all the fields look pretty and all that stuff, which is fine. I mean, it's a great way to do it. all you have to do is drag them out, drop them on, then change the link value. Then I can go ahead and say date, month, year, come back in here, put in the month, year. Make it a little smaller. We don't need to make it that big. And doing each and every one of them. And finish us up, hopefully. And then we got the ending balance. Okay. All right, so now let's clean up my mess. Actually, which one's the longest? I think that's the longest. Do my alignments. Okay. We don't need too much of this. Don't make enough money to have that many zeros. If I ever do, I can easily expand it. Then I'd be George. Make it nice and pretty. There we go. Okay. So now I've got all that set up, and I'll probably do a little bit more with it to make it easier. But let's think what else we've got to have on here. One is I got to have a field that is the remaining balance, because you'll put in the beginning balance, the ending balance, and then you'll be adding up the number of items to be done on the check of how much you've cleared off to make the difference zero. In essence, is what I'm doing. So I'm going to put a field on here, and it's going to be a currency field. I guess we'll just do currency. And what that's going to be now is that's going to be my difference. Recon diff. And all that is a little calculator field that allows me to say, okay, the difference between my beginning and my ending balance is this. And what we need to do at that point is calculate up and allow things to be cleared to do certain things. Okay? And the whole idea now is to make that zero, obviously. Okay? The other thing that I'll end up doing is I'll say, let's put in another currency. That's going to be my deposits. And I go a little bit further. I'll put another currency for debit card, debits, and then checks on the end. my current bank account sends me this debit's separate from the checks instead of having them all together. So we got all this going. We're good to go here. What do I need more further? Well, as most reconciliations, they have the checks separated from the deposits. You notice this is all together. So we've got everything sitting there, and we don't have a deposits list. So let's move this down. And what I'm going to do is create nothing more than a deposits list. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create another table. Go back in here, that's trans recon data. Trans deposit data is trans class. Now, all I did was declare another instance of that same class. And by doing so, I can do certain things to it. Number one, when I come down here, you notice I said trans count and reconcile. Well, this needs to be one more thing. So I need to settle out exactly what a deposit is and what not a deposit is. So I want amount is less than 0. Now, what does that mean? Because I actually store it as negative and positive in the database. So that way, when I do a sum on it, I get a valid total. Instead of a C or a D, I go that direction. At least if I remember right, I have to look at it. So that means I can copy these 3 lines here, change this to deposit, and all I have to do is one more thing. Greater than 0, because now those have to be in my deposits. Okay? Then I can go ahead and create a whole nother table over here, and I'll resize it as I need it. And I'm going to go for the deposits data now. And I want to get my rec. And I'm going to give me the... This one here is pretty easy. I'm just going to do the date. The label is always going to be a deposit, and all I need is the amount is what I need. Actually, I need P deposits. Let's get rid of that. That's what I need there. So that just gives me the amount and the deposit and what date it is, and I'm fine with that. Make that smaller because it don't have to be that big. Make it a little bit bigger here. And I can change the fields. And rock and roll. I now have a deposit list over here. So other than cleaning up a little bit here, putting a little bit of stuff, and what I can do now, and I kind of like doing this. I'll move this off the side and I'll create a super control for that. That's my choice. Some people like them, some people don't. But I like the super controls for that. So I'll put a super control right here. Call it SC. I will go ahead and put an outside border around it. Oop, wrong way. That was the background. That had to be the background. Oh, that's border background. Yeah, we don't want that. Border color, that's what I want. Okay, so now well, supposedly, got to give it a border. Around full borders. Now I'm happy. Okay. I can take all this. Put it all in here. Now I got a little separation. Things look nice and all there is to it. Now, we got to do the saving part of this thing, okay? As far as that's concerned, we're going to make sure it saves and everybody is correct on it and all that good stuff. So again, we go right back to the same thing we did on the other one. And we're going to do a couple things in here. If you look again, we've got all of these fields up here that we got to deal with. We're really only dealing with a couple, 2 or 3 of these. Since we're using a form, we don't have to edit all of these fields and put something in there. What I have to have is a record class prefix. A record class prefix is my Recon record. I have to have the file class prefix, Recon data. And I have to have update table equals false. That means is that it's going to close the screen. And I'm going to now set, let's see, primary field name is the last thing I got to put in there. That's reconcile record dot Recon ID. Those quotes. Okay. We've got to do a couple things with the local procedure here, but because as you check off the items here, we need to, let's go ahead and add that. What I want to do here is I'm going to put a new one in front, and all that's going to be is a checkbox. Okay. And the reason for that is that's what I'm telling it to, whether it's reconciled or not. You can put a checkbox in there. You can put an R in there. You can put a C, whatever it needs to be. And it will then, you do some, as you hit each line, you calculate and you're off and running. Same thing applies here with the other one. Content, set my deal here so I know what my records are. I do the same thing here. Content, do my records. And that's transactions. So I'm going to have to create a transaction record. And what I do now is I've got a Recon record. Transactions. And I do the same thing for the deposit. I have an instance of each of the records. And we do the same thing as we did on the last one down here on the selecting a row. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell it if table arrec.empty false and table select greater than 0 and trans Recon record. That's what I want. Table arrec. That sets that. Same thing here. You notice that I put a 1 under here. A lot of times I'll go back and I'll go ahead and name that on the end what I want it to be. So I'll name it table deposits. That way it names it the same as the array, which is fine. For the most part, if I only have one table on the screen, I leave it alone. I don't work with it. I don't mess with it. But if I have multiple ones on there, I'll name it what they represent. That way it's easier to work with. So if table deposits.empty and now we got trans deposit record equals table deposits. Okay, we're good to go there. Now we still need a reconcile on this one, so I need to add me a field in front. And you're saying, well, how does that work with just putting a checkbox there? Well, this is the cool part about this. I'm going to select the column, and I'm going to say code. And whenever modifying check, okay, whenever modifying check, I'm going to say if all I'm going to do is tell it to tally deposits. That's the only thing I want it to do. And then I can create a local procedure called tally deposits. And I can literally at this point say for each row of table deposits, if check is true, my deposits, let me get a field name here. It's called deposits. Deposits plus equal deposits. There we go. Now what happens is each time they check this off, it will tally up and give me the total here in the deposits every time without an issue, without a problem. And everybody's happy. Wife's happy. Things come out to zeros. You do the same thing on the checks, but you base that on type of whether it's a debit or actually has a check number, you know, things like that. And you get all your little nitpicky things all done on this thing, and life goes on. World happens. Things spin around, and money flows, and everybody's happy that they're taking away everything that you earn. Other than that, we are now at 1 hour. I will be cleaning this up a little bit more because obviously there's a few things I do for my wife to make sure she doesn't ask me questions. And after that, I'll go ahead and post it up as completed. Do we have any questions out there so far about what I have done?
I don't see any questions out here at all, Andy.
Damn, I'm good. Either that or nobody's here.
Or they're glossy. Yeah, no, there's quite a few people here. We've about 23.
Oh, okay, cool.
About 23 playbacks so far.
All right, awesome. That's awesome. So that's basically it. I mean, a lot of it is all just the little stuff now, making sure your recon difference comes up, you know, all that calculations. You'll see how I'm doing that. But the main thing I wanted to go through today was creating, you know, multiple browsers or multiple tables on the same screen and using the class, using the same class multiple ways, so I don't have to develop a whole new class or have a whole new query each time I do something. And also do the add, change, and delete functionality on the save and cancel and the ACDs. You'll be pleased to know that our scene code reference members in classes with colon separation, that is only depending upon if you have not set this, okay? And I'll show you where it is. They use them a lot. Old style usually loses them a lot, but you can see that classes, optional, colon, and double colon prefixes for accessing the members and the methods. If that is checked off, and it usually is true, then you don't have to use the colon or double colon. That's the deal on that.
Yeah, and the question was, in case y'all didn't see it, I've seen code referencing members in classes with colon separators or double colons. Is that notation ever required? And Andy just answered that for us.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped to the answer before I finished the question. So it's not really mandatory if you have that turned on. Now, if you turn that off, it is not optional. And I always leave it on. It's set that way to be on as you create a new project. So I haven't really had any issues with it. Okay. So anyway, the key point about this is that, and over this period of time of 4 or 5 of these seminars that we've gone through, we spend more time setting up. So that way we've got all the functionality we need to build quickly. In 1 hour, I can guarantee you if I wasn't talking in 1 hour, both these screens would be done. Done and ready for testing. Ready to rock and roll and see what comes up and start working through it. And then I usually allow about 4 hours per screen depending upon the complexity. And, you know, some of them are obviously a lot more, but for, you know, simple forms like this, you know, 3-4 hours is what I allow for them fully tested out and ready to go. And if you've done your classes right and you followed along and you kind of figured out what you need there, literally, you're right in that area. You'll get better at it and you'll get faster at it, and you'll be in good shape. Other than that, we'll go into other things. If you guys ever want to come back to the classes for whatever reason, to have a refresher or see if there's anything new, feel free to holler. We'll be glad to do it. Anybody, all the stuff now is in V20 for me. So if you don't have V20, please talk with Tim. He'll be more than happy to help you. Second of all, Mr. Rathke, our president, our resident professor, is actually implementing the classes as part of the training materials in his product. So if you don't have this, or if you want fully understanding exactly what's going on or have it, you'll also get it from Glenn Rathke. He has as part of his stuff there too. So I would suggest that anybody that doesn't have his product, go ahead and get it. There's a lot of nice tools and nice things that he's put together to give you an understanding how to use the WinDev environment and WinDev tools. Okay? It's all yours, Tim.
Okay, I don't have anything else. I guess the only thing I can mention is this year's WX DevCon will be in Amelia Island, Florida. It's going to be the week of October the 5th. Pricing will be the same as last year, and I'm working on the website right now. I hope to have it ready for people to start registering soon. As with last year, there will be an early bird special, and then the regular price will come a couple months later. So stay tuned.
Derek says, have I tried MVP yet? No, I have not. I have not seen where to get that started yet, Derek. I am going to be working on the parallel task and get that part done. What I'm looking to do, barring any creek get in the way, things like that, is I'm looking that come DEF CON, I'm going to be going through the entire Google mapping functionality, since I'm using that, and showing how to do several things on the map. I will go through parallel tasking, and if I've gone through the MVP, then I'll teach some of that down there too while we're at it at the developers conference. But my main purpose on the developers conference is showing how to use some of the Google tools with it, as well as some of the other functionality, the new functionality is just there.
Well, thanks again, Andy.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, the final words will be Andy's. And if there are other questions, please post them on the community page.
Absolutely.
And there is one more question.
Create window RAD MVP. I'll try it. I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
I'll give it a shot. Okay.
Well, thanks,
anyway,
guys, for your questions.
Y'all be good or be good at it. That's all I got to say. Talk